Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
How you
What's
doing,
good, man?
Oh, I was just thinking. We just covered Modern, but
The Modern is sweet right now.
our prediction at the end of last week's episode, which was going on at the same time, we were recording at the same time as the actual Grand Prix. We were wrong.
Well, you were wrong. I'll definitely give you that much.
You predicted that Grixis was going to be the champion, whereas I love Scred Red. I love it in my heart.
Okay. I mean, I played Scred Red without the Screds back at 2007 World Championships. Just mono red, lots of snowlands. People assume that Scred is coming. Next thing you know, you cast Dragonstorm, and they take 20.
Probably more than 20. Well, anywho, this is the Top Level Podcast.
What up? Yes, thank you guys.
I'm Michael J. Flores. This is Patrick Chapin. We are coming to you from both Denver and New York this week. And this episode of the Top Level Podcast is sponsored by you, or at least some of you, our backers on Patreon.
Yes, in particular, thank you. Major shout-outs to Will Curley for supporting us on Patreon.
Thank you for supporting us, Will Curley. So,
hey, and thanks to everybody helping him from last week.
Oh yeah, with the survey.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're still gonna have the survey up this week, and we'd really appreciate it if you take a few seconds to just throw your answers into the survey. That would be very helpful to us. So
sweet. Okay, so tell me about what the hell is Tom Ross doing besides winning it all like always?
Yeah, the guy doesn't lose matches of Magic, I think. Like he came in. So this is really interesting from my perspective. Green-White Tron at the Columbus Open. If you think about Green-White Tron for a second, it's actually a very intuitive deck. It's just no one ever played it before, right? It's no less intuitive than Green-Red Tron. In fact, you're trading in like a relatively card like Pyroclasm for substantially stronger sideboard options. This guy's like really brave. He's got 3 Pad the Exile. Like that's his white contribution.
Well, what about Blessed Alliance?
I mean, it's not. His main deck. He's got 3. It's like I'm going to go with white for removal. Just 3 Path to Exile must be good enough. It's actually kind of hilarious.
He cut the 3 Pyroclasms for it.
It's like hilariously insulting though, because you're like, all right, normally when I pad to exile something, then they get to go up a land, but like his lands are so much better. Like he could have 3 lands in play, and he's casting these gigundous things. I actually think that that's an interesting nod in the Tron shell. But yeah, this next I watched Tom play a fair amount. I watched a decent amount of the Open coverage, and it was just slamming down Karn. Ugin the Spirit Dragon was so impressive for him because you're in this position against certain of his threats, right? These big threats where you got to throw your hand in play, just try to kill him before he draws something insane, and he plays Ugin and you're completely swept.
I mean, what's your plan, to wait him out? Right, like you.
No, I don't know.
Right,
I think that's how you do it.
The use of Blessed Alliance has become super, super commonplace. How do you feel about the use of Blessed Alliance here in the sideboard as opposed to any other life gain option he might have or any other removal option he might use?
Well, he's got a bunch of life gain, right? It's not just Blessed Alliance. He's also got Thrag Tusk. And in a pinch, he's got Nature's Claim, right? So he's got a lot of different life gain.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, partly the Nature's Claim, you got to remember, has the utility of being able to kill an Eidolon of the Great Revel. Like, it's not... Like, it's actually just not that unreasonable because, like, first of all, you have to be ready because they might be playing Blood Moon, right? Like, the burn deck might just have Blood Moon.
Yep.
Second of all, they probably have Eidolon of the Great Revel. And third of all, in a pinch, you can destroy destroy your Chromatic Star or something.
Yeah, and just, gain a little life on that. But yeah, Blessed Alliance it's just a super, super flexible card, right? The ability to gain 4 life is cool, and I think that sometimes you throw that off and you're just happy to do it, right? It counters at least a Boros Charm if that's the heads-up matchup. Sometimes you get more. But the fact that you can just, like, you could kill a Tarmogoyf or something like that, like something good, something substantial with it, regardless of its casting cost or toughness. You know, it comes up. For example, I don't know, maybe the opponent has some sort of giant indestructible flyer. Like, I don't know, a Profane Prince. You could Blessed Alliance to force them to sacrifice that if it's their only attacking creature.
Yeah. I mean, it's also slot efficient. Like, I mean, obviously in Modern, your sideboard slots are worth so much. So having a way to, if you're like, okay, I need to be able to have this amount of removal and this amount of life gain, being able to squeeze it in on just one card. How often do you think it ever comes up, though, untapping your Wormcoil Engine or something? Like, that's the kind of stuff dreams are made of, right?
Oh, I'm sure it's come up. I mean, I've seen Tom Ross. I mean, when you think of somebody who uses every part of the Buffalo, I mean, this guy is absurd. I'm sure he's done stuff like dismember his own Dryad Arbor in order to gain enough cards in his graveyard to kill someone with the delve on a Become Immense on the third turn. I'm sure that's a thing he's done. You know, you ever do that?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I mean,
here are 2 cards.
Definitely.
That adds up to 6. Like, you know, so I'm sure he's done that. What do you think about these Relic of Progenitus main deck? I mean, this
love
is
it. Vital.
I love it that, like, the rest of the Modern format, you know, I think you're the one who said, like, Modern is this weird format, which is, like, half super fast degenerate combo decks, half horrible beatdown decks, but they're all the same deck, you know? Like, well,
I don't know why I said that, but that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense to me.
All my prized amalgams in play on the second turn, or I could just attack you with one Narcomoeba 19 times. You know, like, my deck can do either of those things. And he's got this deck that's just not fast. I mean, I guess on the third turn he can do something really interesting, right? But it's not even that good. Like, getting a Karn in play, that's a powerful thing. It's unlike the opponent has anything remotely that powerful in their deck. But, like, if that's it. That's my turn 3, I play a Karn if I have a perfect draw. Like, that's your...
I think this is a deck for beating Grixis, beating Jund, beating, mid-rangey sort of decks. And it's funny that Blood Moon was the winner last week when Tom Ross's response to that is, well, if Blood Moon won, then there's going to be a disproportionate amount of people hating on Blood Moon or preparing for Blood Moon or playing decks that don't lose to Blood Moon. And if there's a disproportionate amount of people playing decks that don't lose to Blood Moon, then Blood Moon's not going to do very well. And here we are.
Well, the other thing is he's got his Answers main deck to Blood Moon like Oblivion Stone. Like, I actually watched a match where his opponent had Blood Moon, and Blood Moon decks, for the most part, aren't very fast at killing you, right? So he's just like, all right, Blood Moon. And Tom's just like, all right, Oblivion Stone. And he didn't even use the Oblivion Stone for a while. He just, like, put fate counters on all his own stuff. And then he used the Oblivion Stone.
Yeah,
he was just under no pressure. He just killed this Blood Moon, and then he untapped and cast, like, I don't know, like Ulamog or something. And
I mean, what you really don't want to play against when you're playing a deck like this is, like, Ad Nauseam. Or like with like Angel's Grace and the Phyrexian Unlife decks, any of that kind of jazz.
I think those are all the same deck: Angel's Grace, Ad Nauseam, and Phyrexian Unlife. Isn't that one deck, Patrick?
There's like 5 decks that use those cards together.
But they all use all 3, right?
Generally speaking.
So, I think this deck is... I'm actually really happy he did so well for a couple of reasons. One, and he even beat Dredge in the finals. So we're seeing with main deck Relic of Progenitus, I guess it's 2 consecutive big tournaments where main deck Relic of Progenitus was an all-star. But, we're seeing Dredge kind of being not kicked down the stairs, but, kind of kept in not an utterly dominant position. And I love the idea of a Tron deck winning because Burn's good against Tron. Even if they have, 4 or more life gain cards in the sideboard, I wouldn't mind it.
What else did you like from the top 8 of the Open?
All right.
Because, the top 8's kind of, mostly normalish decks, but there's a little bit of weirdness going on.
So I'm looking at this Burn deck that Ben Weinberg used. Yes, 5th place Burn deck.
Eternal Aficionado Ben Weinberg.
So I'm like, all right, this is just very similar to the deck that won the Grand Prix over the summer with, it's a Naya Burn deck, 20 lands, yada, yada, yada. So he's got Wild in the Cattle. Some people like Wild in the Cattle, some people don't. He happens to have a Wild in the Cattle version. La da 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 da. There's 60 cards. Oh, Core Walk Firewalker, the Fireboard. 3 Westvale Abbey. What? I've been thinking about this for 2 or 3 days. What's the deal with Westvale Abbey in this deck? What does it even do?
What's our confidence that this is as intended? I don't know what it would be instead, but
you think it's just a misprint?
I don't know. It's weird. So let's just take it as a given that it's supposed to be here.
Yep.
So first of all, it's unspeakably difficult to activate Westvale Abbey to even just make a 1/1.
Yeah, you need 6 land in play. The deck just doesn't ever get 6 land in games that it's not going to lose, right?
He only has 8 land in his deck to produce mana. To get 5 other ones besides the Westvale Abbey, and he has no use for colorless mana.
Literally none.
Right. I think this card has almost surely... I'm trying to think if there's some sort of a weird lock component thing where somebody locks you out and you win because you can just sit there with Westvale Abbey. But I just do not think that... I think it's just overwhelmingly likely that this is a typo.
Is it even a reliable way to beat Lantern Prison? Right? Because they might mill your mana-producing lands. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's not like they can't get their hand down to 0 with a bridge, so you can't even attack.
Yeah, it's just not likely to me. Maybe it's because there's no Destructive Revelry in this sideboard, right? I would think that maybe it's Wear Tear.
That's what it is.
Yeah, it's got to be Wear Tear. Okay.
Yeah. There's your answer.
Well, that wasn't interesting at all then. I'm like, okay, a Naya Burn deck with Wear Tear in the sideboard.
Yep.
Got it. You know what the card I think is super underrated, actually? Deflecting Palm. I think this
everybody plays Deflecting Palm.
He has 1. Osip and I were hanging out last week. He's just I think the right number is 4. Do you know what that card does against a cranial plating? It's just really, really good. I think a card is super underrated. I played 3 when I won the
You're saying that it against the cranial plating, hopefully they don't have Mox Opal and Springleaf Drum or something, so that they can move the cranial plating.
Well, how about that's a thing that might happen, right? But you're still preventing some amount of damage. Maybe they're moving it to a thing that you blocked, right?
That's not what super good means, man.
I've used this card against somebody who threw their hand on a Glistener Elf or whatever. That felt pretty good. Not for them,
I've seen deranged people just roaming around yelling. It doesn't mean that that's my normal baseline, evaluation of whether or not things are a good idea.
It's basically unbeatable for if you draw them in the right moment in the mirror or against Suicide Zoo.
That doesn't sound just hyperbolic to you.
I think that there's situations very commonly playing against Suicide Zoo. If you draw a Deflecting Palm, they can neither attack nor block for the rest of the game. They have nothing they can do other than draw multiple Thoughtseizes. That's literally.
I don't know.
They can't attack or block.
The Death Shadow decks definitely. It comes up sometimes, and obviously it's amazing against them. But I don't know. I think the card's fine. I just don't know how underrated it could be if everybody already plays it, and it's not exactly I mean, if you really do believe that you're just supposed to have 4, then I suppose it is underrated. But I am skeptical.
I played 3.
But I don't know. Maybe I'm a curmudgeon.
At 3. You're not a curmudgeon. You're not nearly old enough to be a curmudgeon.
All right, maybe I'm an aspiring curmudgeon. Dude, I am so old on the inside.
Lantern Control. This is just yet another deck that is drawing off of Kaladesh for a larger format. Glint Nest Crane is a new buddy to Ensnaring Bridge and Ghoul Caller's Bell and all those guys, along with Botanical Sanctum and Blooming Marsh from Kaladesh.
Well, and this is the version that everybody's playing last week at the GP. Not everybody, but the people who are maniacs enough to follow the O-Right into Lantern Control space. But this particular build of Lantern uses 2 Collective Brutalities, which obviously we've seen Collective Brutality show up in like 74 different decks at this point, but it's good that number 75 is now on the list. And I think Collective Brutality is actually kind of a pretty sweet fit in here. Being able to get up to 8 discard spells in your main deck it's pretty wild to begin with, and then the fact that it gives you just that little extra bit of utility, being able to pitch sometimes some of the extra cards you don't really need, because this is a deck that when it draws multiple lock components, there's just plenty of dead cards that you just might not have a purpose for. And so sometimes the fact that you can turn a second Mox Opal into a -2/-2, and then maybe a Surgical Extraction against an aggro deck into 2 extra life. I mean, all that stuff adds up.
Getting cards out of your hand, like this is
for the bridge.
Yeah, you could just drop a bunch of cards to get your bridge going faster. But in addition to Botanical Sanctum and Blooming Marsh, I can't believe I didn't even mention Inventor's Fair is also another land from Kaladesh, and it fits perfectly in this deck, right?
Yeah. I mean, we talked, we predicted on early episodes that people would be using Inventor's Fair in Lantern decks just because the cost is so low. But this is actually a deck that derives a tremendous amount of benefit from the life gain, not just the tutor. The tutor part's actually very secondary. I mean, it's nice to be able to go find your lanterns or a timely bridge. But it is worth noting that that's actually the reason why there's 1 Pyxis of Pandemonium. That's part, like, instead of the 4th Ghoul Caller's Bell. It's kind of funny, right?
Because you can tutor it up.
The diversity, the variety, just having that option going long. Do
you think people ever use the 7 ability on the Pyxis? It sounds really common, right?
I mean, that's what it... Yeah, I mean, that's something that it has. I mean, it's nice that the Ghoul Caller's Bell mills you for the purposes of your bridges and so on. But part of the reason why it's actually important to have the 1 Pyxis of Pandemonium is to go get when you're playing against a dredge deck. Because both Ghoul Caller's Bell and Codex Shredder go to the graveyard. When you have 1 Pyxis of Pandemonium, you also, remember, he's got an Infernal Tutor, he's got 2 Inventor's Fairs, he's got 4 Ancient Stirrings to try to find it. It actually can allow you to help set up the Lantern combo with a card that isn't going to just keep milling them. So it is actually like a very real thing. As far as the 7 part, I mean, I used the 7 part in block when I was testing for Pro Tour Journey into Nyx.
Yeah, that didn't make it into your Policeman Lion beatdown deck, though, did it?
No, but you know what? Codex Shredder is sweet when your opponent's playing with Courser of Crufix. And where you're playing Courser of Crufix. Yeah, no, it was a thing. Not Codex Shredder, I'm sorry. Pyxis of Pandemonium.
Yeah, it's kind of sort of card advantage, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's very card advantage when you do it to yourself to be able to get more looks at land. And then eventually you set up at the spot where you've got 7 cards, or where you've got just like a bunch of cards, and you're the one choosing it, but you eventually get to a spot where you've got just so many you have such an overwhelming advantage, and then maybe something like Elspeth can actually neutralize anything your opponent might have had. But actually, speaking of Elspeth, there's an Elspeth that cashed the Open. Did you see this deck?
The red deck?
No. Mono White Martyr.
Mono White Martyr. Which
26th place by Lance Schultz.
I did not see this one.
This one seems like it might be one of your guilty pleasures. Let's put it that way.
I don't know. I don't think you could pay me to play this in Modern.
No?
No.
Dude, remember when you wanted to play Martyr of Sands in Extended 10 years ago?
I played Martyr of Sands in Extended, and I came to the conclusion that it was only viable if you added a biorhythm kill. I don't know if you remember this.
Dude, how great is Austere Command? That's some sweet, sweet technology.
Was it Michael Jacob who took my Martyr hybrid deck and was just like, you know what? Akroma's Vengeance isn't the right 6-casting cost sweeper. Let's go with Austere Command. I still never understood why that one was better.
Why better than Akroma's Vengeance?
I love Akroma's Vengeance.
Being able to destroy stuff without destroying all the stuff, I assume, is the big one. But I don't know. I think part of it is just don't you get to sweep all the artifacts?
Chroma's Vengeance kills all the artifacts.
All right. Well, I'm out. So this is a deck with obviously stuff like Martyr of Sands and Sarah's Ascendant are pretty classics, but Kami of False Hope is a different kind of classic.
Yeah, I tried that one early when I was martyring all those many years ago. You can set it up with Proclamation of Rebirth.
Well, and part of it is the reason he's got exactly 2 is so that he can range your Eos for 2 Kami of False Hopes.
One for now, one for later?
Yeah, one for this turn and one for the next turn. And it actually curves into a space where you can start Proclamation of Rebirthing the following turn, because on turn 5, you Ranger, go get Kami of False Hope, use it. On turn 6, you have to play your 6th land, you play Kami of False Hope, and you do whatever else you're doing.
But then on turn 7... you're racing in the air with Sarah Ascendant or Squadron Hawk, because it sounds like you're just going to run out of...
No, because on turn 7, you activate Proclamation of Rebirth during your upkeep, get back your Kami of False Hope, and now you have them locked out. Right, like that's actually like a lock against some decks, some strategies.
Let me think.
It's not the hardest lock in the world, but it's a lock.
Well, I'm just trying to...
I mean, obviously, if they have removal, then like they can disrupt it, because they could like path your guy on your turn, make you sack it, and then get an attack. But it's a pretty good thing at the very least.
It seems pretty tough for like Bant Eldrazi, most builds of Affinity.
Exactly, that's the big thing.
Most of the cards in the Infect... The Infect deck might have some solutions, right? They can dismember maybe, but I think that...
I think it's more likely that the Affinity deck would cobble together a Galvanic Blast or something. But either way, all those decks, Affinity, Infect, Eldrazi, they're all susceptible to that, like being at the very least extremely disruptive to the strategy.
Yeah, it doesn't need to win the game, right? Like if you only do it for 2 or 3 turns while you're clocking them with a giant Sarah Ascendant in the air that's flying and lifelink, then you maybe only need 2 turns to do that. Or like if you're hiding behind Elspeth, something like that, right? Like Elspeth can put you in a position to win.
Yeah. I mean, like that's I think a very underrated actually part of Magic strategy with people's locks or their control or their combo, whatever it is they're doing. So often people want to have the sure thing. They want to have like a nice little bow on it and have it be over with, because they're like, well, if I can imagine a way things could go wrong, then things will go wrong that way. But that's actually that's not always the best strategy, because sometimes it's better to be 95% to win, but arrive in this state 20% more often.
Yeah, I think that the game has to end sometime anyway, right? So if you have like one of these decks that's like a perfect lock, and let's say in this case we have a deck that you get a situation where the opponent doesn't really have a way to deal with a Kami of False Hope, and you're just going to totally like John Schuler them. You could presumably win with your 2 Mistveil Plains. That's a thing. But winning in the air is, probably an easier on your psyche.
Well, sorry. Yeah, all I meant was just having an opportunity. Like, just because it's possible for you to lose doesn't mean that this is the wrong path to be going down. You want to have the highest percentage chance of winning, and sometimes that means that if they have sometimes they get out of it. Like, for instance, if you're doing this combo that locks them out from attacking, sometimes they'll draw one of the 4 cards in their deck that can actually interact with this, but you don't actually need to lock them out for every turn for the rest of the game. You could just stall for a little while. Actually, another example from back in the day is Stasis. Remember how it used to just be the popular wisdom that you had to play Kismet with Stasis? But eventually, some brave souls played some mono blue Stasis in the Thwart Days era, and suddenly we found ourselves not even missing Kismet, because even though they could still cast a few more cards, they're under Howling Mine, and you've got a Stasis, and you bounce it, and it's like it's not airtight. They're not completely locked out, but it's really bad for them.
It wasn't even about completely locking them. The thing was that the structure of the opponent's decks, especially if you're talking about decks like most survival of the fittest decks, which required you to tap a G to get answers, and their cards were relatively expensive anyway. Like, all their good cards were 4 mana or something. Or Necropotence decks were so mana intensive that those decks, they didn't need to lock you out entirely. You were going to do a lot of the damage to yourself. And in some cases, they were doing stuff like attacking you with a Masticore, right? Like, attacking the Masticore, you don't do anything good in your turn, boomerang my own Masticore, right? Pay for Stasis, recast the Masticore. You're like, really? Yeah, Thwart is the thing that's keeping my blue mana up, right? I'm going to counter your interesting thing, and then I can play my next 3 land drops. So, but I actually think there's a lot of interesting technology going on in Lance Schultz's Mono White Martyr deck. I already touched on Mistveil Plains. Mistveil Plains is infinite, right? So a lot of the time we use the word infinite, and it's not really infinite. Mistveil Plains just doesn't run out.
No, this is still not infinite. This is not what infinite means.
Well, it's infinite in that it doesn't run out.
That's not what infinite means.
It's not infinite because I guess the time in the turn.
You're just using the word infinite the way other people do.
All right, so Mistveil Plains can keep you from decking out, and in fact, you can draw the cards you want. Right? That's one thing that's cool. My favorite thing about this deck is actually Emeria the Sky Ruin. So Emeria the Sky Ruin is a non-basic land. It costs it's nothing. It's a land. But it taps for white. It comes into play tapped, but it has a special ability. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 7 or more planes, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So it goes straight to the battlefield, not just to your hand. So in the past, we've seen this sometimes combined with particular expensive cards that had a high likelihood of winning the game, like a Sun Titan or something. Lance doesn't do that, but it does give him some redundancy with cards like Martyr of Sands or Kami of False Hope that can help lock out the game, right? So let's say, just for sake of argument, somebody duressed his Proclamation of Rebirth. He would be able to use this as a proxy for that same kind of activity. He's got a Weathered Wayfarer. He only has 1, so he's not particularly likely to play it on the first turn. But he does
have 4 Ranger Vios to find it.
With Ranger Vios.
Which actually makes a lot of sense, because Ranger Vios finding a Weathered Wayfarer later on might still be in time to get the Emeria and then go find it,
Yeah, well,
particularly if he's doing some shenanigans with Tectonic Edge or something.
Yeah, I love the Weathered Wayfarer games from back in the day, because you have to be a little behind for Weathered Wayfarer to work. So we would do things like with Karoo lands to put yourself slightly behind so that you could use the Weathered Wayfarer. But if he only uses it, that's another one where maybe you're being a little too greedy. If he just uses the card to get his Cavern of Souls for sake of argument, right? He's got 2 Cavern of Souls. Then all of his humans will resolve for the rest of the game. Maybe that's good enough against some opponents. Getting the Emeria, getting Ghost Quarter against Tom Ross would probably be pretty sweet. Getting Tectonic Edge is really great, because Tectonic Edge, obviously you're sacrificing a land in order to get one of your opponent's lands. If you know the right timing, you might actually be able to combine Tectonic Edge with Weathered Wayfarer to get things going. So if you're at parity, you can use the Tectonic Edge. Your Tectonic Edge goes to the graveyard before their land goes to the graveyard. You can use the Weathered Wayfarer while you have fewer lands, and then the Tectonic Edge resolves, and now you're ahead. It's kind of interesting.
One thing I did want to note, by the way, we touched on this a little bit earlier, but the Kami of False Hope, it's particularly important against two of the decks that you were mentioning, Infect and Affinity, because they both contain Inkmoth Nexus and the potential for 10 hits of poison at once. When somebody's using Infect, they can actually sidestep the value gained by all this life gain. You know, like you're going all this trouble of getting up to 40 life or whatever, and then it just does nothing because of their valuing of poison counters instead of damage. So it is kind of interesting in terms of trying to shore up, like both synergizing with his baseline strategy and shoring up a potential blind spot against two of the most popular strategies.
So I would actually say that even though his gaining a whole bunch of life strategy isn't very good against Infect, he actually has a lot of cards which are very good against Infect, like Squadron Hawk. Like, that card is sweet against a deck of all 1/1s, right?
Same against with Affinity, too.
Yeah, like, and you know, it's so much card advantage, and you could just...
Dude, maybe it's time to bring Cobblade back.
Yeah, you think?
Dude, I'd be in for some Squadron Hawking.
I think...
Dude, it's hard without Preordained, Jace the Mind Sculptor, or Stoneforge Mystic.
Yeah, just none of the cards you would actually ever want to cast. But we still have Squadron Hawk. You know,
we do a Squadron Hawk.
I'm looking at this thing, and we've spent more time on this than any of the sweet decks so far this episode, and now I want to play it. I mean, you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, you just got it.
Actually, so what do you think of the other... Do you like that better than the other Elspeth Sun's Champion deck?
The red one?
John Pellman's update to the red-white board control deck, you know, like Blood Moons and Chalice of the Voids and all that stuff. Well, Wrath of Gods. His big twist, he took out all the dragons and all the Pia and Kira Noirs. He took out all the red mid-speed, you know, Jamie Wakefield would love sort of cards and replaced them with a whole bunch of planeswalkers, like a Ajani Vengeant, Gideon, Elspeth, and Nahiri, and then obviously now that he's got Nahiri, he's also got room for one Emrakul of the Aeon's Torn.
So, I mean, I hate to say this is how I would build it, right? But one of the things that...
That's not going to stop you, though, is it?
Well, I was just thinking, when the Scred Red deck won Grand Prix Dallas, the first thing I did was just like, I love Scred, sure, but... We're talking about, this isn't standard. Like when I said that Scred was the best card in the format back in standard, it was like a plowshare, right? And we had a high likelihood.
Plus, you were wrong.
I was not wrong. We had a high expectation, especially because of all the Esper decks that were successful back then, that the games would go a certain length. But there's nothing special about Scred in Modern, right? There are a lot of good cards that you could be playing that fill a similar function for a similar amount of mana in Modern, and I was just like, well, why am I tying myself down with all these snow-covered mountains and playing only one color, if that's true, right? I think that I would want to play this red-white and play with Nahiri. That's actually the first thing that I thought.
And we saw some variations of this, Blood Moon board control deck last week. I don't think they ended up at the top, but some people have already been using the Planeswalker sort of approach. But I agree with you. This does seem like a much more attractive high-end than getting to play with scrying sheets.
I am curious, though. Like, this deck has got 1 Grafsdigger's Cage, 2 Rest in Peace, but it lacks the overload of Relic of Progenitus in the main deck. I actually thought that was one of the attractive features of the Scred Red deck. I also love the inclusion of Simeon Spirit Guide. I think that if you want to go the all-win way, I'm sorry, the boom, I got you with whatever thing.
I'm going to try to lock you out with turn 1 Chalice on the play, or Blood Moon on turn 2, or whatever.
Whichever one it is, just go for it. But to me, that means play 4. So I don't actually understand 3, but that's how I would think about it anyway. But the things I don't understand are 2 Leyline of Sanctity main deck, 2 Lightning Helix main deck, 1 Sudden Shock, no Lightning Bolt. Leyline of Sanctity is a sweet card.
No, it's because of Chalice of the Void. He that's actually good. That's
sure. Okay.
Yeah. He's not playing cards that cost 1 on purpose.
But Leyline of Sanctity is a really great card. I just don't know about playing 2 main deck. Like, I feel like that's a card I want to play
Aggressive.
4 of in my sideboard and 0
Well,
of my...
it makes more sense in this deck as a 2 of than most because he can drag the game out sometimes.
You cast it.
And then he just casts it, and he actually, that's like a vital component to eventually winning, because even though Chalice of the Void will buy you a lot of time against a burn deck, they have a lot of plays. So you're not stopping him just on the Chalice alone. But eventually he can drop Leyline of Sanctity and just completely lock him out.
I am wondering about, like, Gideon Jura, though. Do you like that guy? Like, I love Nahiri in this deck, right? I like Elspeth. I like a Johnny.
I've played Gideon Jura a few times, usually just as like a one of in Jeskai Control or in the sideboard of Jeskai Control.
In Modern?
Oh, yeah. Literally the last Modern Pro Tour, I played Jeskai with 1 Gideon in the sideboard. Yeah, it's an underrated card for when you want to beat somebody else who's playing fair.
Is it better than, like, Forecasting Cost Gideon or another Ajani or a Nahiri or a Chandra? I was thinking, like, there's other Chandras you could play, right? Like, not even just Torch of Defiance. Like, the previous Forecasting Cost Chandra is actually pretty sweet in Modern, and it does a lot of good things.
Why would you play that instead of Chandra Torch of Defiance?
I mean, he is playing Chandra Torch of Defiance. It just happens to be in his sideboard.
I would
likely play Chandra Torch of Defiance in my main deck instead of Gideon Jura.
I mean, I did end up playing Gideon, so I mean, I definitely thought it was right to play at the time. There are other alternatives, but you could easily want a Gideon Jura instead of, the third Ajani Vengeance or something. In general, I don't think it's as good as Ajani Vengeance or a Nahiri, but I think that sometimes you're not playing a Nahiri deck. And sometimes the third Ajani isn't worth as much as the first Gideon. I mean, Gideon is very good at overpowering fair decks, and I don't know. I mean, I'm not the only one though. I mean, Waffo always played 1 Gideon in his sideboards.
Yeah.
Although I think there's less of that now because of Elspeth. Like for instance, Zach Allen played Jeskai. He came in 30th at the Open. He had, in the Gideon slot in the sideboard, he just had an Elspeth Suns champion. Dude, we are seeing so many Elspeth Suns champions.
So, the name of the deck is, the red-white deck is Sun and Moon. Is that reference to Elspeth Suns champion and Blood Moon, I guess?
Yeah, but I don't love that naming convention. I mean, it's fine, I get it, but, like, that is the sort of thing that tricks people into playing Elspeth Suns champion even after it's right to not play it anymore.
So, what do you think about Zealous Conscripts in the sideboard instead of what's the
also? There's a wheel in Sun and Moon that it's not playing.
Well, that's what I thought when I heard the name Sun and Moon. I'm like, is this a Wheel of Sun and Moon combo deck? I'm like, what combo could it be? And I was like racking my brain, and I'm like, this is just a red-white control deck.
Yeah, it's white-red control. Just because somebody along the line. People who play powered formats, they love seeing what they can pull over on coverage people.
So, what do you think about Zealous Conscripts instead of what's the one that's RR3 split second?
Word of Seizing?
Yeah, I think Word of Seizing is super good in this kind of a deck.
We're back to you're talking about the white red.
Oh yeah, I never left the white red. So, but Zealous Conscripts I've always liked, but this is like a lot of clunky casting costs. Like, I think if you play this deck, you just are assuming you're not going to get run over by Naya, right? Like, that's just the bet you're making with the universe.
I don't know. Sometimes you just drop a Chalice on 1 on the first turn, or you Blood Moon and lock them out of a couple colors, even though they're a red deck, or you put up a Leyline of Sanctity and they can just never target you.
I guess if you get any of those things, you'll get a lot of time.
So obviously we touched on Nahiri, which can go cheat up Emrakul, but Madcap Experiment finding Platinum Imperium put up another finish in the hands of Robert Graves, finishing 25th with a blue-red, what looks like in another life could have been a Splinter Twin deck,
Oh yeah. This deck is just like it's the same family.
It's like like Splinter Twin and Blue Moon Procreated, and they have this.
And so here's a deck. It's got 4 Madcap Experiment, 4 Blood Moon, 2 Platinum Empyrean, but then it's got like kind of the soft control elements that were shared by both Blue Moon and Blue Red Tron, and I'm sorry, Blue Red Splinter Twin in other formats, right? Like 2 Cryptic Command.
Splinter Twin was always into this kind of stuff. Like 1 Izzet Charm, 1 Dispel, 1 Burst Lightning, 1 Harvest Pyre, 1 Anger of the Gods.
They really had a lot of crossover. And if you want to think about it as a Splinter Twin deck, you're talking about a deck that's got real decent removal. It's got Lightning Bolt and 1 Burst Lightning, Izzet Charm, Harvest Pyre. Then decent permission in Spell Snare, Remand, Mana Leak, a couple Cryptic Commands. But it's like this. This deck is just rich in high quality cards, and then it just compacts its combo into 6 cards out of the 60. Right? That's
7 actually, because it's got the transformational plan. Like when you play against Infect, you sideboard out the 2 Platinum Imperiums and board in 1 Platinum Angel.
I was just thinking about the main deck, but yeah.
Well, you said 75, so
I thought I said 60, but there's no point in fighting about it.
Either way, the Platinum Imperium combo, being able to transform into the Platinum Angel, that is good, and it's obviously not just Infect. Like sometimes people have some other just combo kill where Platinum Angel you can't even get decked, for instance, like Brain Freeze.
I think if I were gonna invest only 1 Platinum Angel in my sideboard for Infect or those
Not
kind of things,
specifically, but you know what I mean. Lantern.
I think that I would want to have a lot of Dispels, not only 1+1. Because this deck has a big wide blind spot to dismember, and so just having a ton of how else is it going to beat you? Yeah, because Platinum Angel can be destroyed by Dismember.
Oh, right.
So if you're all in on 1 Platinum Angel, I think you need to have a lot of Dispels in order to defend that. In addition,
get 2 negates. That's something.
Yeah, it's not the same thing, especially when you're playing against a deck where having the difference between a Dispel and a negate means you might not lose on the 3rd turn to their gigantic throw my hand at my 1/1 draw. They can just dispel that, and
yeah,
it's harder to. I mean, you could negate it also, but it's harder. But yeah, it's great seeing this one perform. There's a lot of cool stuff going on in Modern. There was some.
Did you see Kyle Bogomus's Jeskai deck?
That was actually one of the 2 decks I really wanted to talk about. I thought that Kyle's deck was really interesting. It's labeled a Jeskai Flash deck, right? So it's got some flash.
And it is a Jeskai Flash deck. It's got 4 Spell Queller, 2 Vendilion Click, 4 Snapcaster Mage, and 3 Restoration Angel. That is a lot of flash.
It's a lot of flash, and he's got
even as sideboard Izzet Staticaster.
And he's got 2 Blade Splicers in his main deck and 2 more in the sideboard, which are not flash creatures, right?
Yeah, that's one of his pieces of technology.
But the thing is, even though it's called a Jeskai Flash deck, this is a Jeskai deck that a diehard Jund player could get his brain around. That's what I think, right? Restoration Angel Blade Splicer is such a Jund thing to do. Do you agree with Snapcaster?
Nah.
No?
Sorry. No, I mean, dude, Restoration Angel, that's the only thing it ever does. It just goes and gets stuff like Snapcaster Mage, and Blade Splicer is just another version of that same experience.
But it's just
how is that Jund?
It's just value. It's just grinding. It's just I'm ahead. Look at my cards. Look what my cards are making for me.
But isn't the Jund experience in Modern Thoughtseize, Inquisition of Kozilek, Lightning Bolt, Terminate, Grimflayer, Tarmogoyf, Scavenging Ooze? What does that have to do with Restoration Angel blinking a Blade Splicer?
I guess, first of all, I don't disagree with the cards that you said, because I guess...
What 2-for-1s do Jund even play? Are you thinking of Blightning Jund from Standard
I
8
guess
years ago?
Thinking about, like...
7 years ago? 8 years
like,
ago?
with Liliana... Like, I was thinking of a...
Liliana's not even the same thing, though.
Like, let me finish. Lilianas and Chandras and Lingering Souls, but I guess that's not the Jund anymore, even though it's the same format. It's just...
Lingering Souls isn't even a Jund card.
People Junded with Lingering Souls. That is the thing.
That's dude, we're not talking about... That's not... Like, Jund is a popular deck right now.
Yeah, but
it is not a deck full of 2-for-1s. It's not a deck with Lingering Souls. Dark Confidant's nothing like Blade Splicer Restoration Angel. Dark Confidant tries to win it all on its own. Dark Confidant is a Jund card. Blade Splicer Restoration Angel is more like the Jund of Standard 7 years ago. But that's not what Jund in Modern is like anymore.
You think Jund is kind of like a medium beatdown deck now?
No, it just uses extremely mana-efficient cards. This Flash deck is it's 2-for-1s. Blade Splicer is a 2-for-1. Restoration Angel is a 2-for-1. Snapcaster Mage is a 2-for-1. Spellqueller aspires to be a 2-for-1. Cryptic Command is a 2-for-1.
Lightning Helix is a 2-for-1 sometimes.
It can be. This is just
a 2-for-1 for the opponent.
This is, I think this is a pretty straight up Just Guy Flash deck, but it's cool that he's using Blade Splicer. It's also nice that he's like pushing so hard on the Flash component, you know? I think this is a sweet deck. I also like the use of Ancestral Visions in the sideboard. I think it's a kind of dicey time to play Ancestral Visions main deck. And I think that it's so good for helping grind out the black matchups.
Oh, there are some matchups that you just suspend an Ancestral Vision and they're like, I probably already lost. You know, they're just start off so far behind. Would you have played more anti-dredge cards in the sideboard if you were with this strategy? He's got like one Graph Digger's Cage.
I don't know. I have to. And he has one. Well, he also has one Rest in Peace.
Ruined Halo is actually surprisingly okay against them. I think you just named Prized Amalgam, and you probably go a long way that way.
But I think he might have also just correctly anticipated that
Tom Ross was going to kill all the Dredge players for him.
Dredge wasn't going to do as well as it had in the past, and two, that maybe it just doesn't matter, that he would lose anyway, and it's not worth the sideboard slots.
So the thing I don't like about this deck, because this is one of the decks I totally wanted to look at and everything, I think that the mana curve is real clunky. Like, a lot of his... Like, Snapcaster Mage isn't really a 2 casting cost card.
No, it's a 3.
Right? And, like, all his other stuff's 3 and 4. Like, anything that he's doing, it's, like, pretty interesting. It's 3 and 4. Or he has to just super draw his cards in the right order. And I hate it when you have to draw your cards in the right order.
Dude, he only has 12 threes, and that's if you count Snapcaster as a 3, when it's a perfectly defensible 4.
Yeah, but, like, I don't know. I guess I want to advance my board earlier than this deck can do that.
I don't think Just Guy Flash is going to be the deck for you then.
I actually thought, how about this one? Did you look at Jim Davis's 17th place deck? Because I could totally just think of myself playing this deck. This is also a Just Guy deck. Do you see this one? Goblin Guide, Monastery Swift Spear.
Yeah, but Dan Jessup finished 12th with the same strategy. Dan Jessup played 4 Goblin, and I did the same list: 4 Goblin Guide, 4 Manus Rider, 4 Swift Spear, 4 Snapcaster, 4 Storm Chaser, 4 Bolt, 4 Helix, 4 Mutagenic Growth, 4 Vapor Snag, 4 Gataxian Probe.
I bet it's the exact same deck. Yeah. Oh wait,
yeah.
Maybe slightly. Oh, Jim just played Snow Covered Island and Snow Covered Mountain, but I think it's the same 75 otherwise.
Yeah.
The thing that's interesting about this deck is the inclusion of 4 Mutagenic Growth and 4 Gataxian Probe, which are Phyrexian, right? Mutagenic Growth is a card that you can only cast with Phyrexian in this deck, right? Because it doesn't actually tap for green. So the thing that actually makes this deck viable is Inspiring Vantage and Spirebluff Canal, right? That you can just
having those 8, you're absolutely right.
That's
huge.
The reason the deck exists. Like, if those had to be fetch lands, like, no, you're just too far behind. Like, that's which I actually think is such an interesting thing that makes the deck viable, right? Like, but I mean, I could just totally get around this. This seems like an awesome deck. What do you think?
Plus, I mean, Mana Strider's pretty cool, right?
That's the card I like the least, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking like it already has Storm Chaser Mage, right? What about Delver's Secrets? That's the
I think you're underestimating the key to Mantis Rider here.
what's the key to Mantis Rider?
So let's imagine you're playing your Naya deck, right?
Yeah.
Turn 3, Jessup just plays his Inspiring Vantage.
Yep.
Mantis Rider, attack. So you take 3?
Oh, because of mutagenic.
Yes!
Oh. I hadn't thought about that, because actually when you're like, say you're playing a Naya deck, and I'm thinking like, I think I would have a huge advantage, but maybe I'll get blown up by mutagenic growth. I hadn't thought about that one. Yeah, that's
Isn't that nice? That's not nothing. I mean, the fact that Mantis Rider so perfectly lines up so that your opponent will bolt or helix it, or not. Either way, you win.
Oh yeah, and it's awful. Like if they were just planning to like landfall and searing it the next turn, right? Like it's just disgusting.
And so if you just go turn 1, if you're playing this Jeskai aggro deck, if you go turn 1 Goblin Guide or Swift Spear, and then turn 2 Storm Chaser Mage, when you play a Mantis Rider on turn 3, wow, are you doing it? So you're already so fast and aggressive. But even in other spots, even where your opponent's fighting back, they play a Nikado on 1, a Tarmogoyf on 2, whatever it is they're doing. On turn 3, they are so going to be just ready to lightning bolt your Mantis Rider. And then you get them. And that's 5 to their face.
I kind of love this deck.
I knew it. I knew it.
I don't need Bogmus's Jeskai deck. This is the Jeskai deck. It was made for me.
Yes, it is.
It literally, I actually already owned the cards Inspiring Vantage and Spire Bluff Canal because I knew that I would play those cards forever. Like when I saw them, you know. This is just the Jeskai deck for me, man. It's got 4 Lightning Helix main deck. I think the sideboard could be vastly improved, but that's I think this deck doesn't respect Dredge enough, but maybe it doesn't have to. It has so many flyers. Can you just race Dredge?
Yeah, I assume that's part of the plan. You have Surgical Extraction too, so it's not like it's nothing, but you are trying to race them. You're pretty fast, and you have flyers.
I was just thinking, like, playing the Naya deck, why not, if Dredge is the deck that I actually think that I'm most likely to lose against if I'm playing the Naya deck, what if I just played Relic of Progenitus and Declaration in Stone in my sideboard instead of Path to Exile and nothing, right? Like, you could just goes a long way. It's similar to the Scred Red deck.
Not Path to Exile and nothing. I mean, what about Surgical Extraction?
No, before I had nothing. I just had, like, Path to Exile and Skullcrack, right?
Ah, okay.
But I'm saying, like, why not play Declaration in Stone and Wrath of Progenitus and just dedicate 7 or 8 slots to the Dread matchup? Like, I think my deck is respectable, and you even get triggers on your Monastery Swift Spear with those cards. It's tough for them to fight through that, and even when they get their great draw, Declaration in Stone just undoes their great draw. Like, if they have, like, a bunch of prized amalgams, it undoes it. If your opponent's playing Jund, for example, right? Like, I think I have an overwhelming favorite against Jund or Abzan, but the games that you lose are the games where they draw multiple Tarmogoyfs, this just takes care of that for you. So, just a thought. I hadn't put a lot of testing into it. Maybe I'll just go Jeskai, though. Jeskai instead of... Am I the kind of person who would just, like, throw Forests into the bin and just trade it in for Island? Am I that kind of a guy?
Dude, when you're playing Goblin Guide,
yeah,
all the rest is just like window dressing. I mean, it's like Goblin Guide. That Goblin Guide has your heart. Let's be honest.
I think I might be sold. No, there's no Eidolon in this deck, though. I love Eidolon.
Yeah, I mean, you could add that.
This is a terrible Eidolon deck. Are you kidding? It has mutagenic growth.
Nathan, lots of good Eidolon decks do. So Nathan Ramsey actually played. There is one more deck I wanted to touch on real quick, kind of coming full circle back to the other style of Tron.
Talk about too.
Nathan Ramsey's Eldrazi Tron deck. It's an Eldrazi aggro deck that goes a little bit bigger. Not too much bigger though. I mean, a little bit bigger. He's got obviously 4 Eldrazi Temple as the sort of quote unquote reward, but he's really another mono colorless deck. Mono brown, mono colorless. He's
in addition to Matter Reshaper, Reality Smasher, Thought Not Seer, he actually has the full 4 Endbringers, which is something we've seen before, but he's got the full 4 Endbringers. He's got 1 Conduit of Ruin, 1 Wormcoil Engine, 2 Urumogs. And he does have the Tron in addition to the 4 Eldrazi Temple, but his only ways to fix the Tron are actually just 4 Expedition maps.
So I was thinking about non-green Tron decks after Tom's win. I was like, well, I don't know if you get enough payoff for going to full colorless, actually, just to begin with, right? Like, there's very little utility to playing the card Wastes, right?
No, I mean you get a little weight. Like it's a necessary evil once you're mono colorless.
There's no utility. There's just
you have to cast Thought Not Seer.
Every land in this deck casts Thought Not Seer.
Not under a Blood Moon.
All right, okay, you got me.
But you also, obviously, the main thing is you got to be able to go find a land when you're getting Path Exiled. And if you're already playing mono colorless, the question is the first Swamp worth more than the second Waste?
Oh,
but either way,
obviously not if you're planning for Blood Moon.
Well, no, I mean, so the Waste helps cast Matter Reshaper or Thought Not Seer, but the Swamp helps cast Dismember some of the time without paying life. Like, they both have purpose, they both have utility.
I think if it were me, I'd much more likely to play a Swamp, but I get the Wastes.
Spatial Contortion, too, I mean.
So is all this dust... Here, I'm a little torn on this.
No, it works. So, obviously you know that with Eldrazi Temple, your All Is Dust is cheaper.
Well, that's actually... I hadn't thought about it, but the under Blood Moon, no.
No, not...
Oh, I knew that. Yeah, I knew that regularly.
I'm saying that just in general, when you cast Eldrazi, when you cast All Is Dust, Eldrazi Temple counts for 2 towards it.
Yes, I knew that. The thing I was going to say is the deck only has 1 All Is Dust in the main deck and no Oblivion Stone. And if one of the main things it loses to is Blood... Well, I don't know if that's true.
No. It doesn't. I don't think it loses to Blood Moon. You were just asking about Wastes earlier.
Then... I think I would still want some Blood Moon defense. Maybe I'm crazy. But I actually thought that blue might be a good color to play in Tron. Like, how much worse is the card Serum Visions than the green cards that you can play? Like, either Ancient Stirrings or Sylvan Scrying. It's, like, way worse.
Way worse.
But you get...
Unplayable, I would say.
Okay.
No, I mean, just Serum Visions. Don't play Serum Visions. You can play whatever blue card you want. Just don't play Serum Visions.
But I like this deck. It's like, it's got some of the high end and...
Talk to me about Basilisk Collar.
What's to say about Basilisk Collar? It just gives lifelink and death touch.
I mean, it's not nothing, right? Like, no, it's a real thing, right? Like, you put Basilisk Collar on the Endbringer.
Do you not remember? I played Basilisk Collar in my blue-red... blue-red Splinter Twin deck.
Yeah, I know. I know. What I'm saying is...
Like, what's it with Basilisk Collar? I don't know. I put it on an Inferno Titan. That was live, man.
Yeah, but isn't that what you do is you put it on Endbringer?
Do you remember we had a discussion about the playability of Endbringer when it was spoiled?
Yeah, we're right.
We were? Okay.
Yeah. So, Endbringer with Basilisk Collar.
Yeah, it's like my Inferno Titan.
Dude, Endbringer was not good in Standard.
It's got another 2 years now, right? They changed the rules. Let's find out if it's good in Standard. I don't know. Probably it'll be terrible, but apparently it's good enough to play in Modern.
Well, that's because of the Eldrazi synergies. The point is that if you put Basilisk Collar on the Endbringer, it is a machine gun. You could just kill 2 creatures a turn while gaining life. And there are going to be times where you just slide the Basilisk Collar onto a Reality Smasher, and it's actually pretty sweet because not only do you gain 5 life, you only have to do 1 damage to the blocker, so it makes the Trample extra good. And I agree with you, Trample is one of the most underrated abilities in Magic,
How do you feel about the Conduit of Ruin in this deck? That's like my least favorite card in this deck.
It's hard for me to get on board with. On the surface, I would, like looking at this deck, this is the sort of thing where if you're in the beach house and one of your teammates shows you this draft of the deck, you kind of scrutinize the Conduit of Ruin, where you're like, are we sure that we actually want the Conduit of Ruin? Maybe. I mean, are you really using the one? I mean, you have 4 expedition maps to go get Sanctum of Ugin. But, like, what are you even really doing? Because the only things that can trigger the Sanctum of Ugin are the 2 Ulamog's, right?
Well, I was just thinking, like, if it comes down to speed and I'm paying 6, I'd rather have a Wormcoil engine, just another one that I could draw. That's the thing. And, like, when it's coming to power, like, in this tournament, only Tom Ross is competing with you on the power vector. So, it's just, no one's competing with you on power. You've got, like, the second most powerful deck. So, it's really always just speed. And Conduit of Ruin isn't fast. That's the thing that how I'd look at it.
I don't have the Conduit of Ruin, but there are 2 more All Is Dust in the sideboard.
Yeah, I noticed. I just think, like, in the main deck.
And 3 Ratchet Bombs. I mean, that's...
I like Ratchet Bomb.
That's some stuff.
And Relic of Virginia. I think this deck's cool. I like it. I think that when I first looked at the deck, I kind of more thought of it like as a less flexible version of Tom's deck rather than thinking of it as like an inheritor to the Pro Tour decks. Because that's much more what it is, right? It's like Bant Eldrazi with different payoff than being banned.
Yep.
Right?
By the way, I'm sorry to have to bring up one more, but dude, what's up with the Batterskulls in Matthew Dilk's deck? He came in 23rd with an Amulet Titan deck that's basically just, the Summer Bloom deck, except there's no Summer Blooms. And so to help fill the void of having no Summer Blooms, because he's playing Azusa, Primeval Titan, Simic Growth Chambers, all that kind of jazz, Amulet of Vigor. But the thing that is blowing my mind, and it's fine that he's not playing Hive Mind, fine. Great, I never liked it anyway.
Really?
What I'm trying to figure out is the 2 Batterskulls.
You never liked Hive Mind in this deck?
I mean, it was fine, but it was like...
It's just like Stone wins the game sometimes.
It costs so much. I mean, it's fine. I play a couple. But, like, I don't miss it that it's gone. That's fine. I get it. I could believe that you might want to cut it. I could believe you'd want to add it, but the thing that's blowing my mind is the 2 Batterskulls. Why are there 2 Batterskulls in this deck?
They could easily be like 5 casting cost Garrix and make more sense, right? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Right. Like, there's a lot of things I could imagine.
There's a lot of things that cost 5 that you can imagine.
Is the thinking that, like, if somebody drops a Blood Moon, you're just stone dead? And so you want a plan so that you can, like, hopefully have a single card that wins the game?
But
my problem with that is that, like, they have 59 other cards besides their Blood Moon.
I think if I were going in that direction, I'd probably rather have Wormcoil Engine, right? I guess this is a really resilient card. The thing is, Batterskull is a great Magic card. It's produced victories in many different strategies. However, it is an incredibly low power 5 casting cost game ender. Like, if you're gonna put it into this thing, all my eggs are in the Batterskull basket. Comparing to things that cost 5 or more mana, it's actually quite weak. And I don't know. I think it's kind of his fast card. It's faster than Primeval Titan. Maybe this is his card that he got a Sakura Tribe Scout so he can play to turn early with Boros Garrison or something. And, he can block for a turn. That's the best I can think of.
I don't think about Sakura Tribe Scout, by the way, in place of Summer Bloom? That's the 1/1 for 1 that you can tap to play a land.
I've never played with the card, even in block. I mean, I've played with the cards. I don't have a firm opinion on that one. I don't know.
It's too bad that he's not playing the blue retreat to Coralhelm,
because then we would understand his deck so much more.
No, like, Retreat to Coralhelm is super sweet.
Oh, yeah,
obviously,
isn't it Sakura Tribe with Sakura Tribe Scout? Well, not infinite, as long as you have lands.
Well, no. It's infinite if you have an Amulet of Vigor and a Simic Growth Chamber.
Oh, actually, it's infinite if you just have a Boros Garrison, right? You just need to do something.
No. Well, you have to untap it. like Amulet Vigor or something.
Well, if you have the retreat, doesn't the retreat untap your Secure Tribe Scout? Then you play the Boros Garrison, which bounces back, then you replay it with the Secure Tribe Scout. You
For what end?
No, you just need to have something to pay off, right?
Right, like
Amulet Vigor. But that's actually infinite.
Well, it's a loop that you can. It's an arbitrarily large loop, at the very least. Let's put it that way.
I have to say this, Patrick. I think that we have gotten into an arbitrarily large loop on Matthew Dilt's deck.
Dude, I love it. I love it. I particularly love the Hornet Queen to go get with Summoner's Pact, because sometimes you got to get filthy.
All right. Well,
on that note,
let's. I'm just gonna. You think about this before we talk next time. Should I switch to Jeskai? I could see myself doing that. That'll be what you think about, and what we'll have everyone else think about is sharing, which is caring. We're Top Level Podcast everywhere. On Twitter, Facebook, Patreon.
YouTube.
All that. Thanks again to Will Curley from Patreon. And we'll see you next week.
Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way not to lose my mind. Trapped in a vault with nothing but time. Parents and my friends